Woo! I am so glad we realized the importance of disaster recovery and business continuity planning. Superstorm Sandy could have completely destroyed everything we worked so diligently to build. You see, disaster recovery and business continuity is not only the processes an organization uses to recover data after a disruptive event, but it also, most importantly, encompasses an organization's ability to resume operations after a catastrophe.
I am so glad that we decided to go with this plan because I remember how hard it was to convince Brian here, the CEO, to move ahead with the planning. After he heard that it was going to cost maybe $500,000 for a mid-sized business such as ours, he almost flipped out. But we did that business impact analysis, and that revealed that what the effect of the unavailability of information systems would have on business functional areas. And once we did that, we saw that we needed to get this plan in place because we needed to get our sales and operations people quickly back on track in the event of a disaster. And that actually allowed us to come up with what our recovery time objective would be.
So you guys don't think my idea of backing up all the stuff on paper and putting it in a closet in trash bags was a really good idea? Is that what you're saying?
No.
That's exactly what we're saying. We don't think that that would have been a good idea at all. I mean, in terms of how long it would have taken us to get back up to speed, to service our customers, to just be organized. I mean, it's one thing to have a natural disaster hit, but it's another to not have a plan in place for the daily operations and the daily things that you need to carry out as a business. So, yeah, Brian, I'm glad that we kind of twisted your arm a little bit there and we're able to get our plan in place.
So my main concern would be to ensure that we don't have any loss of revenue, that we are able to go from disaster to disaster time one of we're still running. We can still meet the needs of all of our customers. Our customers know that they can depend on us to get the products to them. Yeah, Superstorm Sandy was a very bad storm as far as monetary loss and things of that nature. But our company, we didn't lose one step. We kept our products flowing out the door. By us being here in my hometown of Jacksonville, we were able to make sure that all the products were on time, the trucks delivered on time. Our vendors got our parts and products to us that we needed to make our business run. We were able to maintain our reputation, right? We can still go out and say, hey, we were one of very few companies that our doors were still open right after Superstorm Sandy hit.
Right, and the key thing that you said there is to mitigate risk. That's the whole purpose of disaster recovery and business continuity planning, is to mitigate risk so that an organization can carry out its mission and its objective. Like all organizations, we're here to make a profit, and that's the key.
And also, it is to make sure that we do stay in business. One of the things that you mentioned, and it's important, data has shown that of businesses that experience a significant loss of data, only 6% of them stay in business 2 years after that loss. And we were able to be one of those 6% that were able to stay in business after what happened with Hurricane Sandy. Very, very important, not just to keep the operations running, but to actually be able to keep the operations running profitably so that you can actually stay in business. Right. Very important to make sure that plans actually do that.
I can remember when Mr. Patrick came in to the company, was it like 9 months ago there, Mr. Pat? And you said that this is what we need to do. You had these ladies here, you guys had the game plan and said, we need to do this while the sun is shining because one day it's literally going to rain. And I wanted no parts of the price tag that you were putting on this thing. Why don't you just recap that for us?
All right. So like I said, I came on the company about 9 months ago, and the initial price tag I shocked you with was about $500,000.
Yes. Yes.
That's a nice mid-sized company. I mean, that's a big hit to the bottom line. And there's no real ROI on that. So when I come to you, it's like, I'd realize how to scare the pants out of you of what could happen if this catastrophic occurrence happened. Fortunately enough, you were listened very well to our recommendations, and we went ahead and implemented this program. A lot of what we looked at was, I mean, as a mid-sized company, we had to look to using what was called a colo or a co-location. And the one that we decided to go with was the CSX building here in Jacksonville, Florida. This place is so secure, you can really survive the zombie apocalypse right inside of that data center. They have backup, a backup, a backup. I mean, this place is really secure, and it kept our systems up and running. As we've grown as a company, we've become a lot more reliant on our technology. We communicate with our major suppliers and our major customers via electronically through our system, so we don't have as much people interface touching each transaction. So as we're more reliant on these systems, the more we have to safeguard our systems, and that was the choice we made. I remember your first comment of, well, we have this old closet we're not using. How about we just throw all of our systems in there? And we could have made some accommodations, but that would have put us into a really big bind now after Sandy. So because of our implementation, the way we decided to do it, we went through each portion of our organization. We talked to sales and operations and logistics, our accounting and finance team, and our HR department, and we found out what information was 100% critical to our operations, and we were able to get all that, not just do the backups, but we moved all of that systems completely off-site, and so in the event of a catastrophe, which did happen, we were completely safe.
I totally agree that it was a tough sell for Brian in the beginning, but I remember that it became a little bit easier for him to kind of convince Brian after the impact analysis showed that, not only did we have to do data backup, not only did we have to recover data, but we needed to have a secondary site, not just any site, but not just a cold secondary site, but a hot site that was already set up with all the connectivity and all the hardware and software that we needed in order to be back up and functional again, which was very, very critical and important for our salespeople and our operations people to get back up and running again. And this is so important because if we're not able to get back up and running again in a timely manner, not only do we are we losing money and losing customers, again, like has been previously mentioned, we might actually not be able to keep our doors open.
Right. And it's interesting, I was recently reading in the news just about the New Orleans Hornets and how basically after Hurricane Katrina, the team relocated to Oklahoma to resume their schedule and play their games. But from an information standpoint, they didn't have anything other than a few videotapes of practices and games left to review. So no information about their season ticket holders or a lot of the partners that they work with in their organization. And they realize in hindsight after a disaster that, how important it is to have a plan in place. And I'm glad that we realized that on the front end. And I think the Hornets now have a new CIO who's basically put both feet on the ground and developed a plan, came up with a hot site, some generators and things in place. So it's just interesting to see, the ebbs and flows of business continuity planning in the wake of different disasters and things that kind of happen,
Sure.
in the world.
Sure.
Jenna, I think it's very, very important that we actually focus a little bit on that Hornets example. It's a prime example of how you have to have everything working together in a business continuity and disaster recovery plan. There's a lot of moving pieces to it, and you can't just have one piece without the other piece. So part of this business continuity and disaster recovery plan is not just data backup or data recovery or just having an alternate workplace, an offsite location or secondary location. You have to make sure that you have all those things. If you have one thing without the other, then you just have a half-baked plan that would not be as successful as it would have been if you had everything. So with the Hornets, yes, they had another location where they could play their games, but they had no access to data for their customers, they had no access to data for their vendors, and they would have been much more successful if they would have actually not just had a secondary location where they could actually continue operations, but they'd actually had proper data backup and recovery so they would have that information on hand when needed.
So is that why the Hornets aren't, I guess, making the playoffs this year? Maybe so, because they didn't have all of the pieces to the puzzle put together.
You always have to have all the pieces of the puzzle together.
One big reason could be because they don't have our products on their shelves, right? And we need to get a hold of those folks and get our products on their shelves, and maybe they'll have a turnaround in their organization, hopefully.
Absolutely.